Deep-sea creatures are going through a mysterious evolution right now. Seriously, they're evolving at this very moment. Some of them are really ugly, and you might not believe it. But check this out. Here's a squid that lives in shallow waters, and here's its cousin from the deep sea. You can clearly see that even though they're the same species, this squid has evolved into a blood-sucking vampire. The reason? Well, in the deep sea, you gotta do what you can to survive. So do sea creatures really have to take on scary forms to make it down there? Well, kind of. Why? I'll explain this in detail later. But you know what? Not all fish are just scary. Some species are really weird too. Take the sarcastic fringehead, for example. It might look as small as a 2-liter bottle, but when it opens its mouth, it looks big enough to swallow a person's head. And on top of that, it seriously looks like someone just ripped out the eyeball from a one-eyed puppet and swallowed it. So, yeah, the deep sea is not just scary, it's also pretty bizarre. Creatures have a survival strategy, because if you think this is only happening due to harsh environments, let me tell you, land animals also live in tough conditions. Take cockroaches, for example. They can be found in our homes, in the desert, and even in the Amazon rainforest. Forget about those. They've even been found in volcanic craters. But among all these cockroaches, it's not just their size that varies. In such extreme conditions, what exactly is it that makes creatures suddenly turn bizarre and strange the deeper you go? Now that's interesting. While some researchers were trying to find answers, they stumbled upon a headless chicken floating in deep water that seemed to have all the answers. This incident took place in 2018 when a group of Australian researchers was using an underwater camera to search for fishing spots in the Antarctic deep sea. One of the researchers spotted a headless chicken swimming in the water, which was pretty bizarre considering it was in the middle of the Antarctic Sea. The fact that the chicken didn't have a head just made it even weirder, and the researcher was taken aback by this discovery. When I told my leader, Dirk Wells-Ford, about it, he couldn't believe it at first. But when he saw it with his own eyes, he was totally amazed. It seriously looked like a Christmas turkey. The weird part was that it only had one opening in its body, which was used for breathing, eating, and even for getting rid of the food it had digested. Can you believe that? And the even crazier thing was that to keep this opening clean, it had little fish swimming around in it. They were chowing down on whatever was left, and obviously, seeing all that made Dirk and his team super curious because they'd never seen anything so bizarre in their entire careers. So while they were investigating, they started looping the footage of that creature over and over again. Then suddenly, one of them said, "Hey, this looks like a sea cucumber. I mean the same kind you often find just lying around in shallow waters at the beach. How is that even possible? Because you can see there's a sea cucumber and this newly discovered creature on the ground. The difference is like night and day. So how did the researchers come to this conclusion? According to them, there's only one species in the ocean with a single opening and soft, gelatin-like skin, and that's the sea cucumber. That's why they had no trouble identifying it. But the real question still lingers. How can there be such a huge difference between these two creatures, even though they belong to the same species? So when Dirk started investigating this question, he found out that these sea cucumbers are as big as Mount Everest in the ocean. It lived in the depths where food wasn't easy to come by. So instead of a normal shell, it developed flaps-like wings to swim farther and search for food. That's why it looks different from the usual shallow water crabs. After learning about this particular case, Dirk had another question pop into his mind. How many other weird creatures in the deep sea have evolved in similar or even stranger ways? While doing further research, they found this creature, a crab, yes, a crab with only one leg in the picture. Starting from the chest of the person you see, it ends at their legs. Looking at this thing, Just like anyone else, Duck thought it was the biggest crab ever. But boy, was he wrong. Because in deep water, the biggest crabs of this species have legs that can be as long as an adult person. This one was just an average-sized crab. In fact, because they can get so big, these crabs could easily take on a human child too. And that's why, after people spotted them, they named it Crab District. And I bet you remember it was inspired by Thalharang. By the time they got to this creature, they had understood that the survival game in the deep sea was something totally different, something that needed to be understood on a deeper level. That mindset led them to the third, weirdest creature, one that literally had sharp teeth all the way to its throat. This creature evolved from a simple eel because of the changes it underwent living in deep water. So, what happened with this particular eel? Well, in the case of fish like this, deep down, so, what's a survival strategy? Check it out. In shallow waters, eels create electric currents throughout their bodies to escape predators. But in deeper waters, these eels are actually the predators themselves. That's why it's super important for them not to miss out on their prey. To survive, they've developed inward-facing teeth that go all the way down their throats. Now you might be wondering why normal creatures look so weird when they go deep sea. Well, that's just how evolution works. How long does it take to find answers to questions like these? Well, to explore this, MIT researcher Sujan Lindquist conducted some unique research. She specifically looked at some Mexican tetrafish. The reason for choosing these fish is that millions of years ago, some of them moved from shallow waters to deep sea caves. Once they went into the deep water, they lost their eyesight and started looking different from their shallow water cousins. Sujan thought that if she could study them, she was trying to figure out the reason behind adaptation and the cause and effect relationship. If she could find that out, she might understand the weirdness and scariness of deep-sea creatures. She suspected that it might have something to do with a protein called ASP90 that causes mutations in animals' genes. She wanted to verify this, so she injected some chemicals into the eyes of their shallow water cousins and voluntarily manipulated their ASP90 protein. And you know what happened next? Well, after a few days, she noticed that these fish, in the generation, some people's eyes got way bigger, while others had eyes that seemed to disappear, just like their deep-sea cousins. Besides that, they noticed there was an 83% difference in the size of fish eyes, which confirmed their suspicion that the Mexican tetrafish that moved to deeper waters had variations in their ASP90 proteins. So, is the mystery completely solved? Well, not exactly. When the researchers dug deeper into this, they discovered that the weird and scary appearance of all these creatures was solely due to the ASP90 protein. There have been a bunch of studies in the past that show deep-sea animals create a special substance that makes their structures look weird. In fact, a researcher from the University of London named Abby Chapman found that just like the rods or frame of a tent keep it from collapsing, the cells in deep-sea creatures called piezoelectric cells look different from normal cells, which reflects in their physical appearance. But not all fish show this adaptation. Some fish have an alternate way of doing things. They use a mechanism where they adjust their body shape in such a way that it minimizes pressure on every inch of their body. Now, in this case, the most ideal shape to withstand pressure is a sphere. That's why deep-sea sea cucumbers look like inflated balloons. As for these fish, you can see that their lower jaws are unusually elongated. This is because these little fish mostly eat what's available near the surface. The fish escape from their mouths and dive deep into the ocean, so the best strategy is to make their mouths big enough to scoop everything up in one go. Overall, we now understand that to survive in the harsh, deep-sea environment, these creatures have to make changes in their genetics, cellular structure, and even their shape. As a result, they end up looking quite different and unique, even if they don't intend to.